The Vision Pro. Everybody has been super psyched about it. We've been much anticipating it. And of course, now it's finally here. Now, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Aragorn. I had the opportunity to check out the Vision Pro last Friday as it finally arrived to the Netherlands through a friend of ours, which in and of itself is no small feat, but I'll get to that in a second. Now, before we dive into this video, our hands-on experience with the Vision Pro, our thoughts and our footnotes, let's say, I would like to point out that this is part of a recording for our weekly newsletter that we're putting out. So me and Patrick were building this platform called Innovation Network, where we're trying to help businesses that understand, just like we do, that we are facing a time as never seen before in human history, where technology is accelerating every day and its impact on our world and our society is also accelerating. And as a result, that means that companies no longer have the luxury of waiting to see how technology will develop and see what others do with it before they jump in. If you want to survive the next decade, we are convinced anyway that you need to dive in right away, and you need to do your own due diligence, you need to do your own experimentation, and you need to get on board with these new technologies, even if there's a risk that some of them will not pan out completely. Because if they do pan out and you were not on board, you're going to fail. But more on that, of course, in future content. Our goal with Innovation Network is to bring people together, not only thought leaders, futurists, and actual experts from the field, but also companies and organizations, platforms that want to be connected together so they can help each other innovate and figure out what's most important when. Enough about that. Let's dive into this quick review of the Vision Pro. So last Friday, me and Patrick finally got hands on. We were lucky. A friend of Patrick, Luke, got a Vision Pro over from the United States and brought it to his house so we could check it out. And that actually is where our story starts, because the first thing that we noticed was the incredible geo discrimination that is taking place. Now, I should say that it's not just Apple that does this. It's a lot of the tech companies that actually continually do geo discrimination. And I also understand that some of that has to do with the differences in legislation between, for example, the USA and Europe, but doesn't change the fact that there's more people living outside of the USA than there is people living inside of the USA, and we are still always last to be able to see and experience these new technologies or new devices. Vision Pro is one example where we had to wait a lot longer, where actually the only reason we managed to do a review is because we basically cheated the system, because Apple refuses to send Vision Pros to any address outside of the USA. In fact, you have to kind of fake being a US citizen to even be able to receive one. And that's a real shame, because it's not like United States citizens are the only people that would love to check out the next frontier of technology, review it, and then tell the world whether or not it is good or bad or what it means for where we're heading. So that's my first point, geo-discrimination. And mind you, it's not just Apple that participates in this. To a lesser extent, Meta does it as well, and other tech companies like Google. In Google's case, for example, if you have a Google Workspace account, which is not geo-discrimination, but for years and years, we've always been left behind when it comes to the newest innovations. And the same thing is happening now with Google's Gemini, where anybody that's paying for their Google services through Workspace doesn't get access to Gemini, just like we didn't get access to a plethora of other features that free users could use straight from day one, which I find incredibly unbelievable. But for example, also the new company Rabbit, when they released their R1 in January, everybody was psyched. We ordered several, hoping that we'd receive it fast because we were first to order. Lo and behold, we received an email telling us that they were going to send out batches of Rabbit R1s starting in April all the way through August. But all those batches are going to the United States. And so no matter when you ordered as a European, even if it was on the first minute they released it, we're only going to get ours at the end of the year. I was super psyched about the Rabbit R1, and I'm not going to cancel my order. I'll be honest about that, because I really want to see it. But I feel cheated. And so does Patrick, because we ordered this device and we wanted to be the first ones to get it, to test it, to showcase it, and to tell the world about the incredibleness of it. And yet here we are being told that, because you're not an American, we don't really care about you. You were first to order, you send us your money, but we're just going to leave you at the end of the line all the way until America's been served first. And I'm getting increasingly annoyed with this. That same thing happened for the Vision Pro. Long story short. So that was my first point. So the second point I would like to dive into is the eye tracking. I mean, me and Patrick, we're not the kind of people that want to be the first influencers on the scene to do a video. I'm not trying to compete with Marques Lee Brown or these people that get this tech first and then give you the first review. I'm not here to be the first, but I am here to give you the kind of insights that you might not get anywhere else. So we did that, and we found some incredible things in regards to the eye tracking on the Vision Pro. So let me start with the good stuff. If it works, it is real magic, just like anybody else said, whether it's the Verge review or Mark Gasly Brown or any of the other great channels or influencers. Yes, the eye tracking is incredible when it works, and it feels magical, and all of that is great. But what if it doesn't work? And there lies the crutch. Because the first thing that we found when we put this thing on is it didn't work. And if it doesn't work, you have a real problem. Because when you use the Vision Pro, basically everything you do depends on the eye tracking. You cannot really press a button or activate a window or do anything inside there if it doesn't know that you're looking at it. And so if the eye tracking is not properly working, you can't properly use it. And here's the interesting thing. For those of you that didn't know yet, the Vision Pro can recognize whether the person wearing the Vision Pro is the actual owner based on their irises. It does an eye scan. It's super futuristic. That means, though, that you would expect it to react accordingly. So if the owner is wearing the Vision Pro, right, it should just work. But if somebody else is putting on the Vision Pro and it asks you for the passcode, by the way, which it does, that led to a whole other, bag of problems later on, which I'll tell you about in a second. But the Vision Pro has its own passcode, right? Just like your iPhone. And if you put it on and it asks you for the passcode, if it doesn't recognize your face, just like your iPhone uses facial recognition. But here's the problem. It can recognize that I'm not the owner of the Vision Pro. It will then allow me to put in the passcode nonetheless, so I can use it, which basically clears me through the security check. But then it never, ever gives me any prompt to reconfigure itself so that I might best use it. And so because we didn't, you can say, well, you guys are really stupid because Vision Pro comes with a guest mode. Yeah, well, it does come with a guest mode. But if you don't know this, and if you've never used this device, how are you going to figure that out? And how should I know? The Vision Pro certainly doesn't come up with a prompt saying, you want to use guest mode. It doesn't do that. It doesn't do any of that. So you're stuck in limbo with eye tracking that doesn't work, and you're really not capable of controlling anything. Ultimately, after about an hour of trying to figure out how we could possibly get to using the Vision Pro in any way decently, I figured out that I could actually ask Siri to go to the recalibration settings that allowed me to recalibrate for my eyes. And once I did that, of course, the eye tracking magic kicked in. Still though, the oversight on Apple's side for this is, in my opinion, incredible, because what is Apple known for? Apple is known for its magic in terms of convenience. It knows how to make this stuff work. When you walk into a room, your phone asks you to join the Wi-Fi because your friends are on it. You can airdrop all of this stuff. It seems to work everywhere, but for Vision Pro, it seems the only thing they were focused on was the weight and the pixels. Anyway, maybe that's a bit harsh, but that did feel like that after an hour of trying to figure out how to use this thing and how to actually get into the settings menu, how to even control it without controllers if you're so dependent on your eye tracking. So there's that. I really wanted to point that out because that was really a very, very annoying experience straight off the bat as soon as we put the thing on. In my opinion, if it can recognize your irises, it can know you whether you are or are not the owner of the device, it should automatically offer you to go into guest mode. Maybe it should still ask you for a passcode as a security layer, but it should really work that way. Hey everybody, I almost forgot about one of the coolest and craziest experiences we had when trying out the Vision Pro. And you probably already know what I'm talking about. The personas. Yeah. Now, I'm not going to try and rehash how silly they are and how bad the quality of the personas is. And I'm also not going to tell you about how technically incredible they actually work with the positioning and the sense that you can actually see who is looking at whom if you have a call with multiple people, because personas act like kind of real people seen through a window in a digital world. That's been done in all the other reviews, so I highly recommend you to go and watch and listen to those. For example, Mark Gasly Brown's one. But what I do want to cover very shortly is the importance of persona, because a lot of you might be thinking to yourself, what use is it to have a digital representation of yourself instead of just, an image of yourself or a photo of yourself or whatever, right? Why is this important? Well, we're living in a world where basically the exploration age is behind us, right? We're not going to explore much more of planet Earth. Certainly not places where humans can actually go, like the deep sea or anything like that, right? And going to Mars and other planets is also still quite a bit into the future due to the physical limitations of that. So the real only left expansion for humanity is in the digital realm. And that means that over the next few years, we will see an increasing move towards digital spaces and digital experiences. And if you are in a digital environment, you also are kind of in a different place, in a different world. And you want to be able to share that with whomever you're talking to or calling with, just like you share your real physical world experiences with them today. And this is why it will be so relevant to have digital personas that feel and act like they are real people, real presentations of us in the digital world. Now, the personas that Apple made, they're really quite shit. I'm not going to lie. It's really quite embarrassing that a company like Apple came up with such a shitty product. I mean, literally any Unreal Engine character would have been better. But obviously, this one is made by just scanning your face with your headset, right? And so you might say, well, is it really weird that it's so bad? Well, yes, I think it is really weird because they could have still made something that has far more physics in there where you could actually have normal hairdo. They could have allowed you to do some kind of customization like you can do with any kind of character in any computer game to make it seem more like the you that you want to be rather than forcing you to do a one-time scan and then you basically look like a Muppet, right? And in fact, if we look at the technology that Meta has developed over the last few years, which is called codec avatars, you see that they've done actually a much better job. So Meta is already sitting on the technology that is light years ahead of the personas by Apple. They've just not rolled it out yet, and there might be some other technical issues that are the reason for that. But all in all, from a company like Apple, I did expect more. I just did. I expected more. But I am happy to see that they've embraced this technology and that it will be a part of their ecosystem as well, because it's going to be incredibly relevant towards the future. So it's going to be exciting to see what they do with that. Just wanted to let you know that about the personas and the avatars. Secondly, hand versus eye control. So I've seen a lot of videos where people say, well, the hand tracking, the Meta Quest 3 is actually better on the Vision Pro, right? Well, I got a Meta Quest 3 and I can tell you I do not agree. In the 2 hours that I've used the Vision Pro, I found that the hand tracking was very accurate. I don't think it was any different from the Meta Quest 3 hand tracking. In fact, I think that in some ways it was better because the Vision Pro has more cameras to check your hands. So you have a wider range of movement with your hands before they are no longer being tracked. So here's another MrMetaverse from future past. I just told you that the hand tracking on the Vision Pro is just as good as the Meta Quest 3, right? Well, I was wrong. I'm just going to honestly admit that right in this video. I recorded this later on. I was so wrong. It's almost ridiculous. Although I might have not noticed the hand tracking being any worse on the Vision Pro. There have been actual tests done now by, for example, Dennis Kuhner, and we've got that video here. It's probably playing right now. That clearly show that the hand tracking on the Vision Pro is far below the accuracy of the Meta Quest 3. I, for one, am extremely disappointed. The reason I didn't notice when we tried out the Vision Pro is probably because I didn't really do anything where I was waving my hands around really fast. I didn't really do any gaming either because I had no access to games like Pistol Whip or Beat Saber that I would play on the Quest 3 to try VR out. And because we didn't really have an American account, I also really couldn't install any games or try out any of the other games like Synth Riders, for example. So I just didn't notice. And that made me believe that the tracking was pretty good. But turns out it's pretty awful. So there you have it. Just wanted to make sure that you know about that. Having said that, there's one thing about the Meta Quest 3, and I know this is not a review of the Meta Quest 3, but there's one thing about the Meta Quest 3 that I didn't really enjoy, and that's the fact that whenever you use hand tracking, you get these ghostly overlays on top of your hand. I really don't understand what Zuck and his team were thinking there, because if you use the pass-through on a Quest 3 and you use your phone and you want to do something, the ghostly hand overlays make it nigh impossible to do anything that requires eye-hand coordination because you can't really see what you're doing. And this is another thing that the Vision Pro actually got really well. There's no ridiculous hand overlays. There's no ghosting. There's no extra visuals that make you better capable of seeing your own hands. I mean, how ridiculous is this? We know where our hands are. We can see them. We know what they look like. We don't need an overlay to point out, hey, these are your hands, buddy. It's a little silly. Come on. So there's that. What more is there to be said? So when we finally broke through the integration or actually the interface, being able to use it, getting it set up, there was, let's see, integration. What did I write down? The integration with Apple's ecosystem and augmented reality capability showcases the potential for immersive digital experiences. Ah, yes. Okay, so this is something that we saw in other reviews. They didn't put a lot of emphasis on it, but I thought it was really, really well done. And that is Apple's ability to integrate its Vision Pro with its other devices. If you're looking at your MacBook, MacBook, and I don't have one, but Patrick does, so we experienced that. If you're looking at a MacBook and you're in the same account, it recognizes the MacBook and it instantly pops up a really big screen. Now, for the life of me, I don't know why Apple decided to prohibit you from having more than one screen. I mean, isn't that what this is all about? Augmented reality, giving you options that you wouldn't have in physical space. That's the whole idea. That's the whole use case of augmented reality, right? So you'd expect your MacBook to pop up and say, well, do you want 3, 4, 5, 6 screens? But no. You're only getting one. Basically, like you're still in physical reality, making the whole idea of a virtual screen and having to wear a brick on the front of your head kind of ridiculous. It's a big shame. I think that they really missed a massive opportunity there. However, the ability to see a physical object and then have a response from the headset that allows you to interact with that physical object in virtual space, that's truly incredible. And that gives us an idea of the future. Now, I've seen a lot of videos and people said this. I'll be honest, I was expecting this. I've always been expecting this. So I am not so blown away by it as apparently some other people are, like Casey Neistat and even Mark Esley Brown, because it's some incredible feature. I mean, wasn't this what we were expecting? I mean, every science fiction movie you've ever seen probably shows this at some point. So why is that so incredibly special? I think people are just surprised that this is actually truly happening in the real world today. But then again, I'm not surprised, because if you look at historical technological development, this was always in the books for us. We're on an exponential curve. This is my whole shtick. This is my message and my vision that I try to make other people aware of. But more on that, of course, in future newsletters. What more? Well, what I don't understand is ultimately, if you have the Quest 3 versus the Vision Pro, why Apple made the decision to go for such an overpriced device, and why they seem to have ignored almost everything except for the pixels and the quality of the image in the headset. I mean, don't get me wrong, the quality is great and eye tracking is great with that, but I mean, the pass-through isn't that much better than the Quest, right? Yes, it has a high resolution, it does, but it has massive motion blurring, it doesn't function well in low light, and the field of view is extremely narrow. Now, for me personally, I'm not gonna lie, I don't mind the narrow field of view. I mean, ultimately, the first VR headset I ever had is this Oculus DK2. And I can tell you, the field of view on this thing is horrendous, but it never bothered me then, because it's like wearing a space helmet, and you just feel like you're a futuristic astronaut and you get used to it. It takes 5 minutes. Of course, a wider field of view is nice, but it's not necessary, in my personal opinion. But my personal opinion is also not that important, because when I look around me and I look at other people, I find that they really care about that field of view. And so it strikes me as odd that Apple, the company that always seemed to know so well what their consumers want, to the point where they don't even allow their consumers to decide anything, but instead decide for them, decided that, well, our consumers don't need field of view. It's kind of weird, especially when another device, which is like 7 times cheaper, has a better field of view. But maybe that has to do with the price of the micro OLED displays, etc. Of course, I'm not 100% sure, but it's an interesting choice. Ultimately, I think that Vision Pro, it's a device that is interesting, and it does, in some limited ways, give us an idea of what the future in 2, 5, and 10 years will look like in terms of augmented reality. However, and this is something that has been said in other reviews, like The Verge and like Mark Esley Brown and like some others out there. I keep mentioning these because those are the two that were most impactful for me, but it's VR. The Vision Pro is a VR headset. They don't want to call it that, and they're trying to sell it as augmented reality, but it's a virtual reality headset. And it's an extremely heavy virtual reality headset, where they made the ridiculous choice to give it the most uncomfortable headband ever just because it looked better on pictures. And that tells you everything about Apple. They don't really care about your comfort. They care about how well they're capable of selling you their discomfort. At least that's my experience. They will get you to give up, whatever they think you don't need, even if that's your freedom, because they pretend to offer you convenience, and they can even convince you that that is what you're getting. And that goes with the Vision Pro as well. The headset is ridiculously heavy. I don't mind having the battery in my pocket, but if I'm having the battery in my pocket with a little, cord to it, then at least I would have expected the headset to be even lighter than the Quest 3, which it's not. It's heavier. And the reason for that is that Apple opted to create it with magnesium and aluminium, and they made all these design choices that make that headset heavy because that looks more premium and feels more premium, which again, I think they're missing completely the point of what we're trying to achieve going to augmented reality and virtual reality. And I think that really ties into the fact that Apple was the last to the game, and they do not have Steve Jobs to guide them. So where they tried to pull off another iPhone event by coming up with a device that is ahead of the game for everybody else, even though they're late to the market, they didn't really achieve that? That is because there's a lack of vision in their design team and in their leadership, if you ask me. Another really big missed opportunity is artificial intelligence integration, of course. Siri is still a piece of shit. And I'm guaranteeing you that within 5 months, maybe even 2 or 3, we will see that the Quest 3 will get the full Meta AI implementation, making it really next level in terms of the ease with which you can use the headset and move and navigate around its operating system. Anyway, that's it. This is already a pretty long video, I think. I hope you enjoyed seeing us play around with the headset. I hope this is valuable to you. We'll add this into the newsletter. That's it for now. Mr. Metaverse signing off. And like they say in the Netherlands, see you later.